Hi, I'm Alex Howard, and welcome to this week's episode of In Therapy, where we follow real-life people on their therapeutic journeys. In this week's episode, we're exploring the subject of bulimia and how we can find ourselves the prisoner of unhealthy behaviors, even though we know in our rational mind they're unhelpful. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe, click the bell icon to be notified as new episodes are released, and do follow my Instagram at Alex Howard Therapy for daily inspiration and support. This week, we catch up with 23-year-old Sanaya, who came to therapy to help with her anxiety. Sanaya has made some great progress so far, and her anxiety has become much more manageable. Last time, we focused on how her inner critic was attacking her when it came to feeling a sense of aliveness and joy. I gave her some tools to help defend, and I'm keen to see how she's been getting on. So Sanaya, it's lovely to see you.
Yes.
It's been over 3 months.
Yeah.
And I've been wondered a number of times, how are you? How are you doing?
Yeah. It's been it's like the last 3 months. It's been like literally up and down. And then when we booked this session, I was like, oh my God, like I've forgotten everything. And I've been meditating. That's the one thing that I've kept up.
Well done.
But in terms of watching your videos the other day, I was like, oh my God, I've completely forgotten everything.
You might not remember it consciously, but I'm sure a lot of it is there.
Yeah, and there was actually there were a few times, like a few months ago, where I was using the stop process a lot and things like that. But on the whole, like I would say I've been pretty good. And anxiety wise, it's been like a lot less and way less intense. And it's kind of like nice because I feel like I've not been I've just kind of, I would realize, I haven't actually been anxious the past few days, and it's not like I haven't done any practices to stop myself from being anxious. It's just how it is, kind of thing.
Well, it's like you're fundamentally, your nervous system is in a different baseline, right?
Yeah.
So even if you're getting stressed or you're getting stimulated or you're worrying about something, that you're starting from a much lower level, therefore, even if you do go up a bit. Whereas before, I remember we talked about like the baseline was so high, it didn't take much that suddenly it was really intense.
Yeah, exactly. So it's actually been nice, like having those moments of realization, like, like I'm not even doing anything and I'm not actually anxious. But then, I'm just kind of at the moment still trying to find a job.
I was going to ask, so last time I saw you, you were working like mad, doing waitressing.
Yeah.
And you were applying for kind of, I forget the exact word for it, but like a Channel 4 kind of internship type thing.
Yeah.
And I know you were applying for other stuff. And how's that process been?
Yeah, so I didn't get the job for that. And they were really helpful about it after, like, gave me good feedback. And like, basically, I think 2 weeks ago, I had like a workshop, and the workshop was for the 5 people that got to the final stage.
Oh, wow, that's really cool.
So it was like, it was really helpful. It was like a sense, I did feel like a sense of achievement with that particular job. And then, I feel like I'm getting closer, but I keep saying this. But I just keep having interviews. There's like some weeks where I have like 3 interviews in a week.
Wow.
And stuff like that. And so I'm just so to it now. I'm like,
I bet you're really good at interviews now.
Don't even get anxious about it anymore.
So open laps are like, who are you today?
Yeah, exactly. Which one was this?
What am I talking to you about?
No, that's literally it. So I'm just kind of like working really hard for each, preparing as much as I can for each interview, and just trying my best really. And like I'm waiting to hear from 3 places, and they're doing the classic, we'll get back to you on this day, and then that day comes, and then the next day comes, and 3 days later I message them like, blah blah blah, and they're like,
it's just take news.
And so I'm just still waiting. And they have got back to me, but just saying, it's taking a little bit longer than we thought, kind of thing. It's something like I think if this was the first time I was experiencing this, I'd be like, but yeah, I'm just used to it now.
Yeah.
But
well, it also feels like you're making a separation between your value and self-worth and actually getting the opportunity. Like you're, in a sense, you're putting yourself out there, you know you're doing all that you can do, and you know something's going to come in time. All you can do is just keep working for it.
Yeah, I think there's like very few moments recently where I've gone, oh, I haven't got a job and that's down to me. Whereas before, when I just wasn't really used to it, I guess I was a bit more like, what am I doing wrong? But having them give me feedback and literally saying it's gone to someone else and they've just got more experience than you, like, even though it's annoying, it's like quite helpful that, okay, right, I'll just continue as I'm doing. And I've got someone who's like helping me, like mentoring me,
great,
and giving me little mock interviews and things like that. And so it's kind of like confirming that, okay, like it's not me, it's them, kind of thing.
It's not me, it's you.
It's not me, it's them. Yeah.
But I think that's true, and it's like you know, you could be sat here going, oh my god, I've tried everything, it's impossible, it's not fair, I can't do it. Like you could absolutely be in a victim mindset about the situation because it is hard, but it's in that victim mindset that nothing's going to change. And it's like, I remember we had a conversation a few sessions back where we were talking about like your job is to find a job, like that's the job, and you just have to keep working. And it's like the more normalized you get to hearing no or being kind of feeling like you're being rejected, actually the tougher you get, and the more that you learn, you know, each time from it. Yeah,
it's kind of like at first I just felt like every knock, like I felt it.
Yeah, and it felt personal every knock, I imagine, as well.
Exactly. But I feel like now it's just, I think before I was just so intent on like manifesting this job and stuff. And so I'd like fixate on it so much. But now obviously I still really want the jobs that I'm applying for and things like that. But I'm just kind of like, I've got it in my head, if it doesn't happen, then it's like, okay, like there's something around the corner.
Well, also what you're doing is you're developing, I think, some really valuable skills as well, like the ability to take rejection, which is actually, it's hard, but it's an important skill to have. The ability to be gently persistent in terms of following up. And they're going to notice that as well, because not all the candidates are following up. So by definition of doing it, and doing it in an elegant way, in a respectful way, but a sort of way that demonstrates interest, that's also, all that's part of what eventually get you over the line with the right job. So it has been quite good. Like I've been a lot more happier, basically. You feel it. I mean, you feel like there's a kind of brightness, and there's a kind of, you know, a sense of ease, in a sense, that's there. Yeah, definitely. One of the things though that I have like been working on is like my eating has been it's just been kind of all over the place. Recently it's been a lot better. And I went away with one of my friends, and it kind of like, I think it was nice to get out of London for sure. But yeah, it's just, I'll have days where I'll have days where I think that I should be relying on like throwing up. And that's not like a weight thing, that I think that's just, I think it's just me. I don't know what it is, but yeah, it's not necessarily about my weight. I think it's just, I'm not sure. And how often are you throwing up? So I haven't done for a while, but there was like a stage where I'd be doing it like every day. And yeah, I would say that was probably about a month ago. And that was, you were binging before and then throwing up, or you were just throwing up, or what was the kind of the sequence? What was happening? I mean, there were a few occasions where I had been binging, but actually I think what it was when I would feel a little bit anxious. And I think what would happen is I would go out with my friends, and I wouldn't even drink a lot, but I'd have like a glass of wine, and I'd come back and I'd have this feeling of feeling a little bit anxious, and I wouldn't really know why. And then I'd think, oh yeah, like if I just throw up,
it would make me feel better. And it did actually make me feel better. So I think once I had that initial, this is how to like solve this feeling of anxiety, which I didn't feel anxious often, but I think sometimes I would be worried that I'm going to be anxious, and then I'd throw up and I'd be like, oh, I'm fine.
Yeah.
And then I'd just like go to sleep or do whatever, get on with my day. So yeah. And like I speak about anxiety, like it's not even like compared to how bad it was when we first started speaking, like it's nothing in comparison to that. So I kind of don't really know why I'm doing it.
Yeah. Well, let's kind of unpack it a bit more together.
Yeah.
So I remember that there's been periods in the past where versions of this behaviour's been there as well. Just walk me through the sort of timeline of the sequence. So it sounds like there are periods where it might happen from time to time, other times where it's happening a bit more intensively, and other times where it's not happening at all. So just sort of fill me in a little bit over the last few years of what that's roughly looked like.
Over the last few years?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think when I kind of like first started doing it, I think it was purely down to like body image and things like that, like not feeling like I could like control like the way I looked or like the way I felt about myself or something like that. And then it would get quite bad, especially at uni. And
you were doing it how often and how like how many times in a day or a week or roughly just
Yeah, I mean, it would depend. There was never like a good 3 months where I was doing it every day or anything like that. But there could be like a month where I would have like 2 weeks and I would have done it like every day. There were some days where I'd do it 3 times a day, or sometimes I wouldn't do it at all. And so it was literally just really dependent. And I think when I realized that it wasn't actually doing what I wanted it to do, and then also my mum found out, and I was kind of like...
How did she react when she found out?
So she just kind of pulled me aside, and she was just like, what are you doing? And stuff like that. And I think the first time I like denied it, but it was kind of getting obvious because I would, we would go out for a family meal, and then after the meal I'd go to the toilet and come back, and it looked like I'd been crying or something, and she could just tell. So I don't like, she just kind of like had a conversation about it with me. I think she like asked like, oh, is it like an issue? Like, should we like seek help for it? And I don't know, she kind of, she was just like, you shouldn't like be doing it. And so I kind of felt a bit like embarrassed and like, okay. And like, it kind of did work out for me because I was just kind of like, okay, this isn't what I wanted to do. And I just felt, I did feel a little like I just felt embarrassed about it.
And so you stopped completely, or you just reduced, or?
So at first I just reduced because I found it like too much, like I couldn't just cut it out. And then I think what it was I got my friend who's a personal trainer I spoke to her about it. And that's when she kind of like spoke to me like in depth about what I should be doing if I wanted to lose weight, and like what I'm doing to my body and all of this and stuff like that. And I was like seeing like the effects of it. Like I was getting such bad acid reflux, and like I just, everything was just, I just felt unwell all the time and things like that. So it was like I knew that I wanted to like not do it.
Yeah.
And then having my friend who's a personal trainer like help me and like tell me exactly what I should be doing. And I started like tracking food. And then that kind of helped because all of a sudden, like I was just eating normally and like actually like not bringing it up again. And I was feeling a lot more confident and happy. And
this was when like how long ago in terms of timeline?
So I think because I started, I had stopped for a period of time, and then I think during lockdown it had kind of got bad again.
Yes.
And then so I started. I must have. I'm not sure. It was maybe like the second lockdown or something like that. I kind of thought, right, well, this isn't really even giving me the results that I wanted at all. It's doing the complete opposite. and it's just making me unhappy. And I don't know what it was, but it was like just something clicked. And I had tried to stop a few times before and spoken to my mum about, oh yeah, I've stopped, even though I hadn't. And then I think, something just clicked. And then, I think since that kind of second lockdown, I've been like a lot more healthier and like making healthier decisions and whatnot. But yeah, it does come up every now and then, like, and it's...
And something that comes up, it gets a bit of momentum by the sounds of it as well.
Yeah, it's like quite a few months ago, I think I brought it up with you.
Yeah, I remember you mentioned
that. It had happened a few times. And after that, I just felt so disgusted. I was like, okay, never going to happen again. But then these times I was just like, it felt more like I needed it, and I was less like grossed out by it. I was just like, it like kind of got to a stage where I was like, oh, like even if I get anxious, it's fine because I can just do that. And like, it was kind of, it was kind of a relief having it there.
Like a kind of coping strategy in a sense.
Yeah. But even though I wasn't even getting anxious, I think it was just, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure why it just reared its head again.
And then you say it was bad, and then about a month or so ago, you've been doing it less. Like, what's the last few weeks look like?
Yeah, I think the last like month or so has just been a lot better. I think, I'm not sure why. I think it's just, I just kind of told myself that it wasn't like sustainable.
Yeah.
And I think I had spoken to one of my friends about it as well. So I kind of felt a bit more, what's the word?
Supported or?
Yeah, I don't know the word.
Accountable?
Or? Yeah, accountable. So I felt a bit more accountable for it because I told her, whereas before it was kind of like a little secret.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of helped because I just felt like, oh, okay, she was just like, okay, well, let me know if you feel like that again.
Yeah.
And I was just like, okay, well, I will. And then I didn't really. So I don't know. And then, I think I've just been a little bit happier the past month just because I got to go away.
Okay.
So I think getting out of London and having a little bit of a break was kind of ideal. Like, it was definitely needed. But so I don't really know specifically what has changed other than those things.
Since that point in the last kind of month or so, how many times do you think it's happened?
In the past month?
Yeah. The past few weeks, like since that.
The past few weeks, I would just say like once, like not at all. I think there was a stage like in February kind of time where I was like, okay, I'm just going to stop.
Yeah.
And going to the gym and things like that had been like up and down. So now that I'm trying to get back into the gym as well, it's been helpful. But I'm also hoping with this job, because I haven't been working since the beginning of January, really, hoping this job that I start doing will like be a little bit of a distraction as well. I think being at home and like, not really doing anything apart from like going out and seeing my friends, then coming home and being like, ooh.
And then practicing getting rejected all day long.
Yeah, exactly. Which isn't a good distraction. So I think it will be helpful to just know, okay, it's not what I want to do, but at least I'm earning some money. I'm out of the house.
Totally. And that really, if you remember back in the autumn, that also really helped you at that point. When you sort of got that structure and that routine and that focus, that really was a support.
Yeah, I think it's just having a bit of purpose is what I'm kind of like looking forward to a bit more. Yeah.
Well, I'm really glad that you're talking to me about it. How does it feel to you to talk about it? Because it's obviously a vulnerable thing.
Yeah, it feels okay. It feels like I feel a lot better about talking about it. I feel like it kind of helps a lot because I do feel a little bit more accountable for it. Whereas I feel like same with the anxiety, like at the beginning of the year, it was like if I didn't speak about it, it wasn't really happening.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's why I was like, okay, I'm just going to message my friend and just tell her.
Yeah.
And it kind of was, it was just like a relief to be like, okay, well, it's actually a bit more real now.
Yes.
So there's more of a reason to stop kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it does feel, well, I wouldn't say good to talk about it, but it feels like.
But it's better than not talking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It feels like I definitely need to, for sure.
And you mentioned that sometimes you'll binge before, but that isn't necessarily, that's not the driving behavior around it in a sense. How much, like what percentage of the time is that part of what's happening?
I would say I would say like a 20%. Like even when I went away with my friend, we were eating so much, so much food, and like I didn't get the urge at all.
Right.
Even when I was like feeling really full and I was like, oh God, I feel like sick just from eating too much. I was still like, that's not even an option in my head.
Got it.
It didn't even come to my
mind. So that
mind.
isn't really the association by the sounds
it's not.
of it.
I think it is just this kind of, I'm guessing it's just like this, like, I don't want to say anxiety because I don't feel like it's anxiety.
No,
but I think
get it. I get it. And we'll get to that more in a minute because I've got some ideas of what might be happening. In terms of the 20% of the time that there is an excessive food intake beforehand, is that the same things or different things, or it's just overeating at a meal, or like what does that tend to look like?
I think when it is those times where it's because I've overeaten, it's usually when I've eaten rubbish. Yeah. So I feel like crappy.
So would you say you've eaten an excessive amount of calories, or you just have eaten crappy food and you just don't?
I think it's probably just a mixture of both. I think I would sit there and be like, God, I've just eaten so much chocolate or whatever. Yeah. And after I've eaten loads, like I usually don't feel like amazing about it after.
You and everyone else.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so I think it's like a combination, and then I get in my head like, oh, like I don't actually have to digest this.
Understood. Yeah. But it's not so much because obviously with bulimia, there's different ways it manifests, right? And it's like what I'm not really hearing is a excessive binging and then being sick to get rid of that feeling. What I'm hearing is more being sick as a way of trying to deal with a feeling which sometimes is influenced by having excessive food.
And I think because I had all that experience with bulimia or whatever, it's kind of turned into something else now where like it's got nothing to do with my food, but it's just like because I've had that experience of like, oh, it makes me feel better. Yeah. And kind of like weirdly like looking forward to it and stuff like that. I think it's like, it's for some reason, it's just still like in the back of my head, and I've like brought it up again like a few months ago when perhaps I was feeling a little bit low or something like that. And yeah, as you said, like used as like a coping strategy.
Can you, obviously there are different examples of how it plays out, but particularly you said earlier and you almost spoke a bit there as well around, there's a kind of feeling that you get. There's almost like a sequence, right? There's a feeling that you get which might be the beginnings of anxiety. Sometimes it might not be, but there's certainly a feeling there. And then there's an idea that if I make myself sick, then I'm going to feel that way. Yeah. So effectively, the being sick is a way of changing, I'm being a bit visual about it, but changing this to this, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Can you describe a bit more of this? Like the feeling that might be anxiety, it might not be, it might just be feeling a bit low mood, and there might be a few different examples of that, but I'd really like to understand, because if we can understand that a bit more, and we can understand what being sick is giving you, there's different ways we can, because that feeling doesn't sound very nice. Like I can understand why you'd want to have ways to change it. And if being sick is the only option, the best option, no wonder that's what's been happening. If we can have other options and better options and other ways of working with it, then that can really help in terms of changing the behavior.
Yeah.
And I know I'm asking you to talk about the thing you don't want to talk about in a sense, but as you probably remember from before, it's actually really helpful for us to understand that because then we can do something with it.
Yeah. I'm unsure like about what causes it, but I think it is just a combination of feeling low, and it could be about jobs or just randomly. Yeah. And I think it's just kind of like a combination of that, and then feeling anxious that I'm feeling that way. Yeah. And then thinking that it might like, oh, this might get worse. And like I've been in that situation before, and I've known that, oh, like in like tomorrow I'll feel fine, or like in a week's time I'll feel fine. Like I feel a lot better. I feel on top of the world because it's way better than this. But yeah, I think it's like maybe like I get worried or like anxious that, oh, like I'm gonna get anxious again, or I'm gonna get low, and like this isn't what I want. I'm gonna be like staying at home, and like I'm not gonna be like okay.
Yeah. And is there that's how does your actual body feel? Like, like in your heart, in your chest, in your belly, like your mind, like what's the sort of sensations that you get?
I think I just feel really deflated, and I think with that comes like just like I just feel tired in my body, and
if you were to name, might be more than one, or but if you were to name particular emotions, like, you know, to give you the whole, could be happy, could be angry, could be sad, could be frustrated, could be resentful, could be low, could be hopeless. Like what's the emotional state, do you think?
I think it's just really kind of deflated, just kind of like felt like given up kind of thing. A bit like just exhausted.
So it's like a deflated, exhausted. Is it like something like a missing of, like something's missing, or something's like not there, or like?
Yeah, it just feels like, I don't know. I just feel like really low, basically, and like I'm aware that I feel that way, and like that I'm not going to be like this again. But it's just
what's interesting is what I'm not hearing you say is more how it felt 6 months ago when you were really working with the anxiety of the impending doom of like, oh my God, it's never going to, it just feels like you feel much more grounded and measured, like, oh, it will go away. But in that moment, it feels crappy.
Yeah.
And it feels like this is a way to feel less crappy in that moment.
Yeah, I think it's a very, because the thing is like, I know that the next day I'll regret it.
Yeah.
So it's a very like, in that moment, like immediate kind of gratification sort of thing where, oh, I know this will make me feel better right away. Whereas, you know, with anxiety or feeling low, it's not something you can kind of just like snap out and like feel better within an hour or whatever. Yeah. So I guess it's kind of like my way of like feeling better in an hour.
Yeah, no, I get it. And it sounds like after you do it, you do feel different, and then it sounds later on there's a regret and a remorse, and I wish I hadn't done it. That feeling afterwards, like what's that? Like how do you feel as a result?
I mean, afterwards I feel it's weird because I feel a bit of relief, but then I also feel like a bit like annoyed at myself.
It's bittersweet in a sense.
Yeah, and it's like, it's, you know, I know that it's giving me so many problems, like in my throat, like I can feel it after I've done it. So it's just kind of like this moment where I'm like, it's more so I just try and push it to the back of my mind.
But there's something that does feel good about it, because that's why you're doing it, right? And it's like we're having a really honest conversation about it, which I think is really important, because there is a feeling that you're trying to get through doing it. Yeah. Which you're sometimes getting. Like let's sort of call a spade a spade. It's like, you know, people talk about, for example, drug addiction, and everyone's negative, and they're like, yeah, but I feel really fucking good when I say drugs. It's not about right and wrong and shame. It's about really understanding what you're trying to get and then finding healthier ways to get there. So what's the good feeling that it sometimes, not always, but sometimes gives you?
It is more of just like a relief, and like it's like
and is the relief the feeling of emptiness, like having like purged, or is the feeling of relief a sense of like control of, like what is that?
I think it's probably a bit of both. Like the physical feeling of it is just like, oh, I feel good because I'm like, oh, there's like nothing in my system now, which isn't obviously true, and I know that. But in my head, I'm like, oh, there's nothing there now. Like, and for some reason in my head, that's a good thing. But emotionally.
And when, just to explore that a
Yeah.
bit further, when there's nothing in your system, what does that feel like?
I think I just, I feel like I just feel a lot happier when I feel a little bit empty, I guess.
So that feeling of emptiness gives you a feeling of happiness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say so.
Yeah, it makes sense. And it makes sense. Like you're not crazy. Like you're doing it because it's giving you something.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, we all have things that we do which are not helpful or healthy that will have positive associations.
Yeah.
So when you feel empty in that moment, you feel happier as a result. What do you then feel? So you feel empty, you feel more happy. What comes next?
Like, I think I do just feel a sense of relief and a bit calm.
Yeah.
And then I think what I do is I kind of like push it to the back of my head about what I've actually like done.
There's a kind of denial in a sense.
Yeah. But it's like given me what I wanted it to, which was, you know, I don't feel upset or anxious anymore. I just I think it kind of creates, I don't know, maybe if it's like, I feel a little bit more like in my body. So I just kind of crack on with my day.
Yeah.
Which,
I mean, you don't get much more on your body than you're physically, you know, being sick, because it's like you're feeling the experience of your body and there's a kind of lightness and there's
so I guess I'm just like less in my head, which is probably why I'm trying to think about exactly how I feel, because in that moment I don't actually think about the way I feel. I'm just like, happy, and like I get on with it because I've done it now, and like but that's why I felt like I should tell someone, because then I was like, because it kind of got to the stage where I was like doing it and then not forgetting that I had done it, but just.
But you see, that's the interesting bit. Well, there's lots of interesting bits to it, but that's one of the interesting bits. That to get the good feeling, you actually have to go into denial, right? Because you have to ignore the fact that you know it's not a healthy behavior. You know that it's not, you know, there's a kind of the acid reflux, you know, that you probably know it's very bad for your teeth. Like there's a whole bunch of like impacts that come from a lot of being sick. But in a sense, in that moment, what you're doing is you're compartmentalizing that, and you're focused on the fact you have this emptiness and a sense of kind of more in your body and feeling happier.
Yeah.
And then later on, the bit that's in the box sort of floods out, and the good bit's now gone because it's kind of passed. And then there's the guilt and there's the sort of wishing I hadn't done it. But then, of course, what can happen is then now your mood is lower, which at the moment is the trigger and the compulsion then to want to do it again.
Yeah.
So then you get in a bit of a vicious circle with the whole thing, where you do it and you have a momentary feeling better, and then you feel worse as a result. Therefore, you're more likely to choose the behavior again.
Yeah, that's what I kind of felt like. I kind of gotten into like this cycle of like just doing it. And I'm guessing it was just because I had just kept doing it. So it was just a cycle. I think I kind of just, I don't know, I just kind of was like, okay, I need to snap out of it.
Well, having this conversation is also part of that, right? Because it takes courage on your part to bring it to this conversation, talk about it. And I think in terms of changing it, I think that there's a number of different pieces to it. If we understand what's triggering it, there's what I'd call macro and there's micro. So macro is the overall general how you're feeling in yourself and how things are going. So for example, sustained period of not having job, working, getting a lot of practicing of rejection and so, mood is a bit lower overall, bit less routine. On a macro level, more likely then to choose the behavior. Whereas if you've got good focus and you're enjoying what you're doing, you're feeling a sense of progress, happier overall, less likely to choose the behavior. But then on a micro level, there's particular events and circumstances and triggers that you're more likely then in that moment to feel low in mood and wanting to feel that feeling of happiness and lightness that's been associated. And It may also be sometimes, 20% of the time it sounds like it's also food induced. So maybe there's times where you just actually feel uncomfortably full, and that's not a very nice sensation.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, actually, if I'm sick, then I'm going to feel better. And that, on a micro level, that then becomes the trigger.
Yeah.
So it's helpful then for us to work on it from both perspectives. So working it from the perspective of, which you're already doing a certain amount of anyway, making sure overall, I think the new job sounds great, that you've got some focus. It's I would start to bet some solid amounts of money you're going to get your break in terms of career, because I feel like you've stacked the odds in your favor. Like, you've got enough irons in fires, you're putting the word out, you're putting yourself out there, you've got a lot to offer, and someone's going to go, this is the person we want. And so that is going to come in time. You mentioned earlier that you're still meditating. Tell me about that.
So yeah, I mean, it's very on and off, but I mean, I do it at least 5 times in a week.
That's great.
So
that's really great.
It's not bad, but yeah, like it's been super helpful, and I've just been using like Headspace and trying to find, like, usually it will be before bed, but I try and like do it in the mornings, or like at some point throughout the day, or even like if I'm taking my dog out for a walk, like I'll listen to a meditation like podcast or something like that. And so that's, it's something that's been really helpful at kind of like making, like, trying to get out my head and things like that. And then also like been up and down with the gym as well, but that's another thing that I've kind of recently been trying to get back into.
And how have you got on with, because it sounds like before, from what you were saying, having that really good gym routine meant you were less likely to be sick, because it sounds like if you're putting the energy in that way, you don't want to undo the progress you're making. Also, you're being sick, you probably have less energy, therefore you're going to have less sort of capacity in the gym, and also the gym's going to lift your mood, therefore you're less likely to have the trigger in the first place.
I think that is the main thing, is just like the gym. It's like as soon as I force myself to go, it's great. Like, it makes me feel so much better, especially if I get it done in the morning. It means that I'll have like a pretty good day sometimes. It's just, as soon as I've skipped 2 days or something like that, it's just kind of like really difficult. I found it really difficult to get back into it. And so I kind of just lose it. And I think in February and end of January, kind of mainly February, it was just, I kind of felt like I wasn't really I felt like fatigued for most of it. Just felt really tired. And so I had no energy to go to the gym. And then, I would just be like...
Was that partly as a result of being sick a lot?
I guess so, yeah. Yeah, probably was.
Because also what you're doing is, when you're being sick, you're throwing away your energy.
Yeah.
It's like, it's literally, food is our energy source. So if you're purging, you're also throwing your energy source away.
Yeah. I guess I didn't really think about that, but...
I'm not saying that to shame you. I'm just making that point.
I think it was just, and I guess it just kind of created this cycle of like, oh, I'm tired, and I feel low, and I'm not going to go to the gym, and then kind of carried on. But I think it was just, it could have also just been a very general thing to start it off. I think I was just feeling low for whatever reason, and it kind of just like kicked it off. Well,
also what you're doing right now is hard. Like, you're trying to push your way into an industry that's hard to get into. You're at the beginning of that, so you've got little to show in terms of, I've done this and got that. And it's the sort of industry that once you're in, but it's hard to get in. And you will get in, but it's challenging to get in at that sort of first kind of key piece. And I think hopefully you can see, as we're talking about it, that there's like vicious circles and there's virtuous circles. And what I mean by that is, a vicious circle is you feel low, so you make yourself sick, and then you feel a little bit better in perhaps in the moment, but then you feel a sense of regret, and your inner critic's beating you up, and you feel more tired because you've thrown away your energy source. And then the next day you make yourself sick again, and then this happens for a while, and then it feels like I'm in a rut and I can't get out of it, and your motivation's lower. Your biochemistry will also get imbalanced, so your stress hormones will go up a little bit, because when we don't have enough of energy from food, our stress hormones go higher to compensate for that, so you'd be a bit more anxious, and then you'd be actually a bit more depressed, and you can sort of see how the whole thing feeds off itself. But equally, when you're not making yourself sick, and you're getting to the gym regularly, and you're meditating regularly, and you're in a job which may not be the dream job yet, but it's the job that gives you focus, and your self-esteem's a bit higher, and then you see a longer gap since you were last sick, and you feel like you're more in control, like the whole thing then feeds into a virtuous circle, that each positive act is feeding more positive acts.
Yeah.
Which sounds like what you've already been doing a certain amount of for the past few weeks anyway.
Yeah. I think it was kind of helpful to get away and kind of just
break the cycle.
Yeah, exactly. And then, when I came home, I didn't really think about it much at all. And I've literally had like barely any moments of anxiety, really. I have had a few moments where I've been like, I've gone out to eat with my family or something and I've overeaten and I've been like, oh, but it's never, at the moment, it's never been that was never been the drive.
And has that resulted in being sick on those occasions?
No,
okay, great. So that also shows that you can overeat. Yeah. And that doesn't necessarily have to then result in being sick as a result of it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of...
and by the way, know what, that feeling of overeating doesn't feel good for anyone. It's like sometimes you just have to go, oh shit, I got carried away. I need to just wait a few hours, and then it will, your system will digest it, and it will then feel easier.
And it's definitely something just from my experience with it all in the past, where as soon as I have that feeling of overeating, which I just hate because I've had that experience of it, it's like, I've just hated that feeling. And I feel like in my head, every time I do overeat, I do associate it with that. But because I'm aware of it, and it was a different, I was different then, and like it was for different reasons and whatever, it's kind of like, it's not something that I would want to do.
Yeah. How much have you been using the stop process over the last few months?
So...
Because you mentioned a little bit earlier that
so probably around like December and like a bit of January. And then, because I had watched, I think the last time, I think it was the video on the inner critic.
Yeah. Module 9, I think it is,
And so I had watched that around December time, and I had done a little bit of work on the stop process as well. I think I'd watched that video again, and then so I was using it like here and there, mainly for when I would feel a bit anxious. I think it was only when I'd feel anxious, really. I think in December I had used it a bit for like when I'm, because we were doing a bit of work on the inner critic. So I was like, when I, feel like I'm being harsh on myself, or like can feel myself like saying like not nice things to myself, like I did it a bit then. But since then it's kind of like stopped. I've just kind of like forgot about it. And then there'll be occasions where I'm like, oh, I should do that. And then I'll do it on the odd day.
Because I think it could be really helpful here.
Okay.
Because in a sense, there's different ways with working with being sick therapeutically, but particularly when you have a feeling which results in a behavior to get to another feeling, if we can recognize that feeling and then stop.
Yeah.
And in that moment of stop, because what you're really trying to get in that moment is a feeling of lightness, and a feeling of happiness, and a feeling of spaciousness, and a feeling of being more in your body. Which, from what you've described, is kind of what happens when you meditate and when you slow things down. And if each time you notice a trigger that either would result in being sick or the desire to want to be sick, and to stop and to really calm and really settle your system, and also in that moment to recognize you've actually got two choices. You've got the choice of continuing the cycle of being sick, but with that goes less energy, feeling more stuck, more frustrated, long-term damage to your body if you keep doing it, or you've got a choice of really focus on being the best version of you, being more grounded, more calm, more consistent in the gym, more kind to yourself, more kind of optimistic. And in that moment, you're like, I can see those two choices clearly, because also what's happening at the moment is you're putting into a box the negative and sort of pretending it's not there in that moment. And if we can also, if in that moment you could truly see both choices clearly, like all of the cost and the implications of continuing with being sick, or all the benefits of not, I think that decision would be easier. At the moment, though, what's happening is you're focusing on the positives of being sick and all the negatives of not.
Yeah. No, it's definitely something in that moment. Like, I only think about like kind of one thing.
Yeah.
I don't really think about, you know, how I'm going to feel about it, or like how I'm going to be in like a month's time. It's kind of a very
instant gratification in a sense.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah. How do you feel about using the stop? Do you feel like that's something you'd be able to do, using the stop process in those situations?
Yeah, no, I definitely would want to.
Yeah.
And like have a look at the videos again and kind of like, I definitely think it's something that could work.
Yeah.
There's
I've seen it have really good results with bulimia, and it's like it's sometimes that alone is enough, particularly if there's meditation practice and other things around it. Other times it's helpful to bring some other pieces in, and we can certainly do that as well. But it's a really, particularly given you've already had some good experience working with the stop process historically, it's good to sort of to reintroduce that as a skill. I think rewatching module 4 would really help, because it would just remind you of the process and how to work with it. But particularly what you're wanting to do is to stop the kind of impulsive, just going to, and in that moment, because I think what's happening is, as you describe, you're becoming quite tunnel vision in that moment. It's like, if I just do this, then I'm feeling this, if I just do this, I'll get to that. And it's like your focus goes there. Yeah. And if we can stop that, and you can step back for a minute, and you can calm everything down and then re-look at it, I think you'll find that it's a different choice.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely think so. I think I just have to acknowledge this is how I'm feeling, and kind of like just like give it a go, because I mean it's worked so well for when I've been feeling anxious, and this is pretty much a very similar thing. Like this is the way I've been feeling, and I think it's definitely something.
And sometimes with this sort of thing, there is a strong addictive element to it. What I mean by that is it's very compulsive, and it's a very hard cycle to break. Yeah. That isn't really what I'm hearing you describe, because what I'm hearing is it's a little bit take it or leave it. Like there's times where it has been like 3 times a day, or times it's been most days for a few weeks, but then it's also stopping for a few days or a week or two, or even a month or two at points. And that is, it's not a very good analogy, but that's more like your casual smoker versus your hardcore addicted smoker. Yeah. Like, and it is easier therefore to manage, and you already have a level of influence and control over it. Yeah. Which gives you quite a bit of wind in your sails in being able to move on from it.
Yeah. I think the only like kind of time where I feel like it is like addictive is only when I do feel like that, the very little instances that I do feel like that, and it's not like I know that I could control it. Yeah. Like I can tell myself not to. Yeah. It's just in that moment the urge to is there.
And that goes back to my point about the macro and the micro, right? Because the macro is we want to have your life in such a way where you don't feel that way in the first place. Therefore, you're not having to work with it. Yeah. But on the micro level, because inevitably life does have moments that are not easy, we want that not to be the default place that you go to. And that's where the stop process helps you break that cycle. And when you do find yourself in those tricky moments, because that is inevitable in a sense, just not the frequency perhaps it has been, that you're able to have a different choice. So rather than I feel this way, I'm sick and then I'm going to feel that way, it's like, stop, let's slow everything down, let's calm everything down, let's connect it. And it might be as you connect in, you go, actually in this moment, I need some support. And you call a friend, or you text a friend, or you go and have a chat with your mum, but like you recognize there's a need, and you act on that need, as opposed to just going to the default of being sick.
Yeah, I think it is something that I can like manage. I just need those kind of tools to like help me manage it.
Yeah, it's setting the circumstance up so on a macro level things are easier, and you're already doing a lot of that, and I'm great. I think the job will help with that. and then it's having a different strategy to use on a micro level.
Yeah.
And rewatch the stop process, really work with that. And then why don't we put something in sooner rather than later, so you can have, again, from that kind of focus and accountability point, you can go, right, I've got an appointment with Alex in, 2 or 3 weeks or something. Yeah. So then you can really focus on, and don't just use the stop process in a reactive way. So if you don't get the feeling, you don't, I would each day make sure you're checking in with yourself. Where am I at? Am I running any patterns around this? So be quite proactive in terms of how you're working with that.
Okay. So just using the stop process, like as and when in my day, if I'm
if you're just feeling like your levels are rising, either anxiety is rising or mood is dropping. Is how I'd look at it.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah.
Very good. Any questions you got for me?
No, I don't think so. Just the videos. It's 4.
It's module 4 of the Reset program, and the module's labeled stop process, so you'll find it easy. Find it easily. Yeah. It might not be easy, but you'll find it easily. And there's also module 5, which is the presence process, which is a sort of version of the stop process. So, I mean, if you want to rewatch, modules 1, 2, 3, you can do as well, but it's mainly module 4 is what I would focus on.
Okay. All right. I'll do that. Thank you.
Okay, good. Any other questions?
No, that's it.
Okay, brilliant. Well, it's been very nice to see you, Sanaya. I'm really pleased to hear the progress that you've been making. And I think everything that you've learned, which has had such an impact on the anxiety, is all really going to help on this piece as well.
Yeah. So thank you so much. Keep going. Thank you.
You're welcome. I hope you found this week's episode helpful. Bulimia is a tricky thing to be working with. And even if you're not experiencing bulimia, I think we can all have the experience of finding ourselves doing a compulsive behavior, even though we know that it's not helpful for us. What's really key with this is getting in touch with what are we trying to achieve through doing the behavior, because behind every behavior, there is some kind of positive intention. There's something we're trying to get through doing that behavior. If we can have more awareness of that, then we can have more healthy, more helpful strategies to get what it is we're trying to get. We no longer need the behavior. Also, as I talked with Sanaya about, really making sure we have those fundamental practices in place that calm our system overall and lay us a better foundation so we don't find ourselves in those more tricky and more difficult places. I'm curious as to what helps you when you find yourself doing things that are unhelpful. Is it just having awareness? Is it having better choices to choose, at having ways of stop and breaking the pattern you're in? What helps you break out of the habit of unhealthy habits? Do share in the comments below the video. And next week on In Therapy, we're going to be catching up with David. I look forward to seeing you then.